The council chamber stretched wider than any building on Earth. Thousands of alien delegates filled the curved seats that rose in tiers toward the domed ceiling. Their voices created a wall of sound as they argued in hundreds of different languages. Translation devices hummed, turning the chaos into something understandable. Daniel Carter stood alone at the human podium. He wore a simple black suit, nothing fancy. His silver hair was neatly combed. His hands rested calmly on the podium's surface. Around him, alien beings of every imaginable shape pointed and shouted. Some had tentacles, others floated in containment fields. A few were just clouds of glowing gas. All of them were angry at him. The Jorth ambassador slammed his three-fingered hand on his podium. He was tall, covered in blue scales with eyes like a predator. The human species refuses to share their military technology. They refuse to allow galactic inspections of their home system. They expand their military forces without permission. This cannot stand. A wave of agreement swept through the chamber. The crystalline Vex clicked their agreement, their bodies chiming like glass. The hive mind Ectors spoke as one voice from their collective consciousness. Humanity is dangerous, unpredictable. They must submit to council authority. Daniel listened. He had been standing there for 3 hours. 3 hours of accusations. 3 hours of demands. 3 hours of threats. His face showed nothing. Inside, he was counting down. The council chairman, a being called Mordeth who looked like a floating brain in a mechanical shell, raised one of his robot arms. We have heard the charges. The Galactic Council has existed for 10,000 years. No species may stand outside our authority. No species may threaten the peace we have built. He paused. We vote now. All in favor of declaring war on the human species to enforce compliance? Lights appeared throughout the chamber. Blue lights meant yes. Red lights meant no. Daniel watched as blue lights filled the space like stars. 847 species voted yes. Only one voted no. The Vryn, a peaceful trading species that had become friends with humanity. The vote is complete, Mordeth announced. A state of war now exists between the Galactic Council and Earth. Humanity has 30 standard cycles to surrender their technology and submit to occupation. Daniel touched his podium controls. May I respond? Mordeth looked surprised that he wanted to speak. Very well. Daniel stood straighter. He smiled, not a nervous smile, not a scared smile, a smile like someone who had been waiting for something. Finally, he said. His voice was quiet but carried through the chamber. We were wondering how long you would take. Confused silence filled the space. The Jorth ambassador leaned forward. You smile? We have declared war on your species. Your world will be conquered. Will it? Daniel asked. He looked around the chamber, meeting alien eyes. I have a request, Chairman Mordeth. A matter of diplomatic courtesy. Give us 48 standard hours before you begin military operations. Time to evacuate our diplomats from council space. Time to prepare our response. The Jorth ambassador laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. You want time to run? Time to beg for mercy? Something like that, Daniel said. Mordeth considered. Several council members objected, but others thought it was amusing. Let the humans have their 2 days to panic. It would make the conquest sweeter. Very well. 48 hours. Then we come for Earth. Daniel bowed slightly. Thank you, Chairman. That's all we needed. He closed his communication link. In orbit above Earth, Admiral Katie Morgan sat in the command chair of the Earth Defense Force flagship, Independence. She watched the council proceedings on a dozen screens. She was in her 50s with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. When Daniel smiled, she smiled too. He gave the signal, she said. Activate Protocol Endgame. Her second-in-command, Commander Ben Tyler, entered commands into his console. Protocol Endgame activated. All forces receiving the signal now. Around Earth, ships began to move. Not just the 200 vessels the Galactic Council knew about. Not just the defense fleet they had observed and counted and dismissed as too small. Thousands of ships. They came from hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt. They rose from lunar bases hidden in craters. They emerged from the dark side of Jupiter's moons. They uncloaked from stealth positions throughout the solar system. Katie watched the tactical display fill with green markers. Each one was a human warship. 50 years ago, we sent our first probe beyond our solar system. 15 years ago, we made first contact with the Council. On that day, we knew this would happen. Ben nodded. The analysis teams predicted it within 6 months of first contact. The Council couldn't tolerate an independent species with advanced technology. So we smiled, Katie said. We negotiated. We signed treaties. We acted like we wanted to join their club. And every single day we prepared for war. In Geneva, deep beneath the mountains, Dr. Henry Walsh stood in the Defense Ministry's command center. Screens covered every wall, showing ship positions, supply chains, and intelligence reports. Henry was old, nearly 70, but his mind was sharp. He had spent 20 years designing Earth's defense strategy. All fleets reporting ready status, an aide said. Henry nodded. Good. Activate the deep cover teams. It's time for Colonel Jake Peterson to stop pretending to be a traitor. Across the galaxy, on 12 different council worlds, humans received a coded signal. They were merchants, teachers, artists, and diplomats. They had lived on alien worlds for years, some for more than a decade. They had learned the languages, made friends, and become part of local communities. Nobody suspected they were all trained Special Forces soldiers. Colonel Jake Peterson stood in his small shop on the Zorth homeworld. He sold Earth goods, things the Zorth found fascinating. Music recordings, art pieces, food items. The Zorth loved human culture. They just didn't respect human power. His communication device buzzed. 3 short pulses. The signal. Jake locked his shop door. He walked to the back room and pressed his hand against what looked like a normal wall panel. It slid open, revealing weapons, communication gear, and intelligence files. Finally, he whispered. He had been waiting 5 years for this moment. On Earth, Daniel Carter arrived home to his apartment overlooking Lake Geneva. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat by the window. His hands shook slightly now that he was alone. Not from fear. From relief. His communication console chimed. Katie's face appeared. You did it, Daniel. They took the bait. They always were going to, Daniel said. Arrogant empires always destroy themselves. They just needed a push. He sipped his drink. How long until we're ready? We've been ready for 3 years, Katie said. We just needed them to throw the first punch. Now we're the defenders. History will remember that. 48 hours, Daniel said. Then we show them what humanity really is. Across human-controlled space, the news spread. Not panic. Not fear, determination. Humanity had prepared for this. Every major city had underground shelters built over the past decade. Supplies were stored. Medical facilities were ready. Children had practiced evacuation drills in schools. Nobody was surprised. On Mars, the shipyards went into full production mode. Ships that had been 90% complete were rushed to finish. Weapons systems were brought online. Crews who had been training for years climbed aboard. In the asteroid belt, mining facilities revealed their true purpose. They weren't just mining facilities. They were weapons platforms. Railguns the size of buildings. Missile batteries that could launch thousands of warheads, all hidden in hollowed-out asteroids that looked like normal mining operations. Lieutenant Sophie Brooks sat at her communication station on Earth's moon base. She was young, only 28, but she was the best signals intelligence officer in the fleet. For 10 years, she had been intercepting Council communications, breaking their codes, learning their secrets. We have full access to their military networks, she reported to Henry Walsh. I can read every message they send. They have no idea. Henry smiled. It was not a kind smile. Good. Let them think they're fighting primitives. The surprise will break them faster than any weapon. The 48 hours began. The Galactic Council prepared its fleets. The Zorth gathered 5,000 warships. They had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had conquered dozens of species. Humans would be easy, they thought. The Council's military commanders met in virtual conference. We send the third fleet, the Zorth admiral said. 5,000 ships. It will be more than enough. Should we send more? Another commander asked. Just to be certain? The Zorth admiral laughed. For 200 human ships? No, save our strength for real threats. This will be over in days. They had no idea that human intelligence officers listened to every word of that conference. They had no idea that every decision they made was being recorded, analyzed, and countered before they even finished speaking. Daniel Carter spent those 48 hours in meetings, strategy sessions, coordination with fleet commanders. He slept 4 hours total. He had been preparing for this moment for 15 years. Now it was here. On the final hour, he stood in the command center with Henry Walsh. The Council believed humanity was panicking. Their intelligence networks reported emergency meetings in every human government. Ships moving frantically, resources being redirected. It looked like chaos. It was actually perfect coordination. Katie Morgan stood on the Bridge of Independence and watched her tactical display transform. Green icons multiplied across the screen as hidden fleets powered up. She had spent 10 years planning this moment. Every ship had a position. Every captain knew their role. Nothing was left to chance. "Status report," she said calmly. Commander Ben Tyler read from his console. "Kuiper Belt shipyards are bringing 70 capital ships online. Lunar facilities have launched 400 cruisers. The Mars Defense Wing is ready with 600 ships. Jupiter's hidden base is deploying 300 heavy carriers." Katie nodded. The numbers kept growing. "Total force strength?" 2,000 combat-ready vessels, Ben said. "Another 500 in reserve if needed." A junior officer looked up from her station. "Admiral, the Council thinks we have 200 ships. When they see this, they'll understand they never knew anything about us," Katie finished. "That was the point. We showed them what they expected to see. We hid everything else." Across the solar system, ships moved into position, not randomly. Not in panic. Every movement had been planned years ago. Captains opened sealed orders they had been given when they first took command. Every instruction was precise. Captain Lisa Grant commanded the stealth carrier Valkyrie. Her ship was special. While the Council had been watching Earth's obvious military, they had never detected Valkyrie. She was coated in materials that bent sensor waves around her hull. She could float in orbit above an enemy world and remain invisible. Lisa was 35. One of the youngest carrier captains in the fleet. She earned it by being the best at what she did. Stealth operations, deep strikes, appearing where the enemy least expected. "We have our orders," she told her crew. "Once the battle starts, we take Valkyrie behind enemy lines. We're going to visit some Council shipyards, show them how it feels to be attacked at home." Her crew grinned. They had been training for years. Practicing runs, simulated missions. Now it was real. On the Zeorth homeworld, Jake Peterson moved through the city's underground infrastructure. He knew these tunnels better than most Zeorth. He had spent 5 years mapping them, learning the security systems, finding the weak points. He wasn't alone. 20 other humans moved with him, all disguised as various alien species. Some wore holographic projectors. Others had undergone temporary biological modifications. They looked like traders, workers, tourists. They were Earth's most dangerous special forces soldiers. "Target is the central communication hub," Jake whispered into his secure channel. "We take it offline, their whole military network on this planet goes dark. Do it quietly. No casualties if possible." The team moved like shadows. They had done this 100 times in simulation. Every guard patrol was timed. Every security camera was mapped. They reached the hub without being detected. Jake placed a small device on the main power conduit. Not a bomb, something more sophisticated. A virus designed by Earth's best programmers. It would spread through the Zeorth military network, copying data and sending it back to Earth. Then it would shut everything down. "Device armed," Jake said. 30 minutes until activation. Similar operations were happening on 11 other Council worlds. Human agents who had lived normal lives for years were suddenly showing their true purpose. Not to hurt civilians, not to cause terror, just to cripple military infrastructure at the perfect moment. Lieutenant Sophie Brooks worked in her Signals Intelligence Center on Luna. Her team monitored every communication in Council space. They had been doing it for a decade, completely undetected. "The Council's third fleet is preparing to jump," she reported. 5,000 ships. Zeorth Admiral Krax is in command. He's confident. Too confident. Henry Walsh watched over her shoulder. "What are they saying?" Sophie played back an intercepted communication. The Zeorth Admiral's voice came through, translated to English. "This will be the easiest conquest in Council history. Humans are primitives who got lucky with some technology. We'll be home in a week," Henry chuckled. Famous last words. Let him think that. "Overconfidence is our greatest weapon right now." Sophie pulled up another file. "Sir, I've been analyzing their fleet compositions. They're bringing mostly heavy battleships. Big, slow, powerful. They expect us to fight the old way. Stand and trade fire. But we won't," Henry said. "Katie's been studying Earth's naval history. She's going to fight like the ancient submarine commanders. Fast attacks. Strike and fade. Make them chase shadows." Around Earth, defensive platforms came online. These weren't hidden. The Council knew about them. What they didn't know was how advanced they had become. Weapons that Earth claimed were still in testing had been fully operational for 3 years. Dr. Henry Walsh stood in the Geneva Command Center and reviewed the final preparations. He had designed most of Earth's defense strategy. He understood something the Council didn't. Humanity had spent 10,000 years fighting itself. Every kind of war, every kind of weapon, every possible strategy and tactic. The Council had peace for most of their history. They fought wars, yes, but they were wars of overwhelming force. Show up with a bigger fleet. The enemy surrenders. Simple, efficient, boring. Humanity knew how to fight when outnumbered, how to win when everything seemed lost. It was written into human history. Ancient battles where small forces defeated massive armies, desperate defenses that held against impossible odds. Humanity had learned every possible lesson about war because war was what humans did best. We're not just fighting a battle, Henry told his staff. We're teaching them that numbers don't matter if you don't know how to use them. The 48 hours ticked away. Earth's civilian population moved to shelters. Not in panic, calmly, orderly. They had practiced this. Children carried emergency bags. Families helped elderly neighbors. It was organized because humanity had been preparing for 15 years. In New York, underground shelters stretched for miles beneath the city. They had food for 6 months, water, medical supplies, entertainment to keep people calm. Some families acted like it was a camping trip. Others were quiet and nervous. But nobody panicked. Similar scenes played out in every major city: Beijing, London, Lagos, São Paulo, Tokyo, Moscow, Mumbai. Underground cities within cities, all built slowly over 15 years while the Council watched and suspected nothing. Daniel Carter stood in his Geneva apartment for the last time before moving to the command bunker. He looked at pictures on his wall. His family. His late wife, who had died 5 years ago. She had known about the preparations. She had supported them. "I hope we're doing the right thing," he said quietly to her picture. "We tried peace. We really did, but they wouldn't let us be free." His secure phone rang. Katie's voice came through. "Daniel, the Council fleet is preparing to jump. 6 hours until they arrive. Are we ready?" "As ready as we'll ever be," Katie said. "Our fleet is in position. The trap is set. All we need now is for them to walk into it." Daniel picked up his bag and headed for the command bunker. The underground facility was 500 meters below the Swiss Alps. It could survive a direct nuclear strike. It had enough supplies for 1,000 people to live for a year. And it had the most advanced command and control systems humanity had ever built. When he arrived, Henry was already there. Dozens of screens showed ship positions, intelligence reports, and communication channels. It looked like organized chaos, but Daniel knew better. Every person had a role. Every screen had a purpose. "The Council is mobilizing more forces," Henry reported. "They're sending additional fleets to other human colonies. Mars, the Europa stations, Alpha Centauri. Let them," Daniel said. "Those colonies are ready too. The Council is about to learn that humanity doesn't just defend Earth. We defend every human everywhere. On Mars, the Red Planet's defense force is prepared. The colony there was 50 years old. 3 million humans lived in domed cities and underground tunnels. They had been building their own fleet in secret. 400 ships smaller than Earth's vessels but fast and deadly. Commander Rachel Porter commanded the Mars Defense Force. She was born on Mars, had never seen Earth except in videos. But she was still human and she would defend her home. "Earth is setting the trap at Proxima," she told her captains. "We're the second act. When the Council sends reinforcements, we hit them. Show them that every human world can fight." The Council had no idea. They thought Mars was a weak colony. Dependent on Earth, barely defended. They were going to learn the hard way that Martians were just as tough as Earthers. Maybe tougher. Living on Mars made you strong. The clock counted down. 3 hours. 2 hours, 1 hour. Katie Morgan did a final check of her fleet. 2,000 ships. Each one crewed by people who had trained for years. Pilots who had run millions of simulations. Gunners who could hit a target at maximum range. Engineers who could keep systems running through anything. "All ships report ready," Ben Tyler announced. "We're green across the board." Katie opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Admiral Morgan." The first volley lit up space like a star going supernova. 2,000 human ships fired simultaneously. Missiles streaked across the void. Energy beams cut through the darkness. Railgun projectiles moved at a fraction of light speed. Admiral Krax watched his shields light up as impacts hammered his flagship. The Jorth had the best shields in Council space. They had stopped every weapon ever fired at them. But these human weapons were different. They punched through like the shields weren't even there. "What are they using?" Krax shouted at his science officer. "Unknown technology, Admiral. The weapons are phasing through our shields somehow. They're hitting the hull directly. Katie Morgan watched from Independence as the first human strike devastated the Council fleet. Quantum disruptors working as designed, she said calmly. Their shields are tuned to stop conventional weapons. Ours aren't conventional. The quantum disruptors had been Earth's secret weapon. They didn't break through shields. They simply existed in a quantum state that let them pass through energy barriers. By the time the shields detected them, they were already hitting the hull. Ben Tyler coordinated the fleet movements.
Second wave, focus fire on their battleships.
Third wave, target their carriers. Fourth wave, screen our flanks. The human fleet moved like a school of fish, perfectly synchronized. Each ship knew exactly where to be. The Council fleet tried to respond, but they were designed to fight in straight battle lines, formation combat. Humans didn't fight that way. Captain Ryan Hayes led Fighter Wing 7. He had 200 small craft under his command. Each fighter was tiny compared to the massive Council battleships, but that was the point. Small targets were hard to hit. Break formation and go hunting, Ryan ordered. Pick your targets and make them count. The fighters scattered. They dove between the massive Council ships, firing at engines and weapon systems. The big ships tried to track them, but human pilots were better. Earth had been flying combat aircraft for over 100 years. These pilots had reflexes trained by 1,000 hours in simulators and real flight time. Ryan locked onto a Zjorth battleship and fired a spread of micromissiles. They hit the engine section and exploded. The battleship listed to one side, power failing. That's one, Ryan said. Who wants to bet on 20? His squadron laughed and dove back into the fight. They were scared, sure, but they were also excited. This was what they had trained for. This was their moment. On the Zjorth flagship, alarms blared. Damage reports flooded in. 20 ships destroyed in the first 2 minutes. 50 more damaged. The humans were cutting through them like a hot knife through butter. Return fire, Krax ordered. All ships return fire. The Council fleet opened up with everything they had. Energy beams and missiles filled space. Some of them hit human ships. Shields flared and a few ships took damage. But most of the fire missed. Human ships were too fast, too maneuverable. Katie watched 3 of her ships take hits. One was badly damaged and pulled back. But the rest kept fighting. Damage report. Light casualties across the fleet, Ben reported. Nothing we can't handle. Their weapons are powerful but slow. We can dodge most of them. Good. Execute Phase 2. Half the human fleet suddenly accelerated. They shot past the Council formation at incredible speed, then turned and hit them from behind. Now the Council was surrounded on all sides. Krax realized they were in serious trouble. His fleet was bigger, but size didn't matter if you couldn't hit the enemy. Pull back, reform the line. But pulling back meant exposing their engines. Human gunners targeted every ship that tried to retreat. Explosions bloomed across the battlefield. Deep in Council space, Jake Peterson activated his virus. On the Zjorth homeworld, every military communication system shut down. Screens went black. Command centers lost contact with their fleets. Orbital defenses stopped responding. Zjorth military officers stared at dead consoles in confusion. What happened? Get the systems back online. But the systems weren't coming back. Jake's virus had spread through their entire network. It would take days to purge it and restore functionality, days they didn't have. Jake and his team were already moving to their next target, the main power station that fed the military district. More chaos, more disruption. And through it all, not a single civilian was hurt. That was the rule. Hurt the military, never the innocents. On 11 other Council worlds, similar operations were happening. Human agents who had lived normal lives were suddenly crippling military infrastructure. The Council had enemies inside their own homes, and they never even knew it. Lieutenant Sophie Brooks monitored the battle from Luna. She listened to Council communications and smiled at what she heard. Panic, confusion, disbelief. They're trying to call for reinforcements, she reported. But half their comm systems are down thanks to Colonel Peterson's teams. The messages aren't getting through. Henry Walsh nodded. Good, let them be confused. Confusion leads to mistakes. Sophie pulled up another channel. Sir, I'm detecting something interesting. Some of the Council species are starting to question the war. I'm picking up private communications between ambassadors. They're saying this was a mistake. Already? Henry was surprised. The battle has barely started. The Council sold them on a quick, easy victory, Sophie explained. Now they're watching their fleet get destroyed. Reality is hitting hard. Back at the battle, Katie ordered the next phase. All ships with gravitational mines deploy them now. 100 human ships released strange devices that looked like spinning spheres. They floated into space and activated. Suddenly, the fabric of space around them twisted. Gravity wells formed where none should exist. Council ships trying to maneuver suddenly found themselves pulled off course. Engines strained against artificial gravity. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems went crazy. "What is this?" Crack shouted. "What are they doing to space?" His science officer was frantically checking readings. "They're creating artificial gravity wells. It's pulling our ships out of position." "Admiral, we can't maneuver properly." Katie watched the Council fleet struggle. "Now they're sitting ducks. All ships concentrate fire. End this." The human fleet poured fire into the trapped Council ships. With their maneuverability gone, the Council vessels couldn't dodge. They could only sit there and take the punishment. Explosions rippled through the Council fleet. Ships broke apart, escape pods launched by the thousands. Katie made sure her ships didn't fire on the pods. Killing fleeing enemies wasn't the human way. Not this time. "Sir, the Council flagship is trying to retreat," Ben reported.
Katie opened a direct channel to Admiral Cracks. His face appeared on her screen.
He looked shocked and angry. "Admiral Cracks," Katie said calmly. "You came here to conquer Earth. How's that working out for you?" Cracks glared at her. "You tricked us. Your intelligence report said you only had 200 ships." "We lied," Katie said simply. "You assumed we were primitives who didn't know how to deceive. That was your mistake. Humans have been lying to each other for thousands of years. We're very good at it." "This isn't over," Cracks snarled. "The Council has more fleets. Bigger fleets." "I know," Katie said. "And we'll be ready for them too. But right now you need to make a choice. Keep fighting and lose your entire fleet, or retreat and tell the Council what you learned here today." Cracks's pride wanted him to keep fighting, but his training said to preserve his forces. "What did we learn?" Katie's expression was cold. "That humanity has been ready for this war since the day we met you." Every smile was fake. Every treaty was a delaying tactic. Every diplomatic mission was an intelligence-gathering operation. "We played you. All of you. And now you're paying the price." She cut the channel. "All ships, they're retreating. Let them go. We want survivors to tell the story." The Council fleet broke formation and ran. Ships jumped to hyperspace in a panic. Some didn't even wait for proper calculations and ended up scattered across multiple systems. Out of 5,000 ships, only 400 escaped intact. The Battle of Proxima was over. Humanity had won its first major engagement. But Katie didn't celebrate. She knew this was just the beginning. Daniel Carter appeared on every communication channel in Council space. His face was broadcast to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. Sophie had hacked into their networks and given him access to everything. "People of the Galactic Council," Daniel began. "Your leaders declared war on humanity. They said we were dangerous, unpredictable, that we needed to be controlled. But let me tell you what's really dangerous: corruption, oppression, forcing species to obey or face destruction." He pulled up files, secret Council documents that Sophie had stolen. "For the past 10 years we've been watching, learning. We know about the species you conquered. The ones you claimed joined voluntarily. We know about the resources you steal, the freedom you deny. You built an empire on lies. On Council worlds, beings watched in shock. These were secrets that were never supposed to be revealed. We gave you peace," Daniel continued. "We offered friendship. We asked only to be left alone. You couldn't accept that. You needed to control everyone, so you declared war, and now you've learned that humanity doesn't lose wars. We end them." 3 weeks after the Battle of Proxima, the Galactic Council still hadn't recovered. Their third fleet was destroyed. Their communication networks were compromised. Riots were spreading across Council worlds, and worst of all, they had no idea what humanity would do next. They found out at dawn on the Jorth homeworld. Captain Lisa Grant brought Valkyrie out of stealth mode directly above the planet's largest shipyard. The facility orbited the planet like a massive ring, building warships for the Council fleet. It had been there for 1,000 years. It was supposed to be invincible. "Targets locked," her weapons officer reported. 42 construction berths. 12 completed warships. All defenses are active. Lisa had been planning this mission for 3 weeks. Study the intelligence, learn the patterns, find the weak spots. Now it was time to execute. "Fire everything," she ordered. Valkyrie unleashed hell. Missiles streaked from her launch tubes. Energy beams cut through space. Railgun rounds punched through the shipyard's hull. The facility's defenses tried to respond, but they didn't know where Valkyrie was. The stealth coating kept her hidden even while firing. Explosions ripped through the shipyard. Construction berths collapsed. Half-built warships broke apart. The 12 completed vessels tried to launch, but Lisa's fighters were already on them. Small, fast craft swarmed the big ships and tore them to pieces. In 10 minutes, it was over. The Zorth's main shipyard was destroyed. 1,000 years of construction capability gone in a single strike. Lisa pulled Valkyrie back into stealth mode and jumped to hyperspace. By the time the Zorth military responded, she was long gone. Similar attacks happened across Council space. Human strike forces hit 12 major shipyards in one day. The Council lost 40% of their ship construction capacity. Without those yards, they couldn't replace their losses. Katie Morgan coordinated the offensive from Independence. Earth wasn't playing defense anymore. They were taking the fight to the enemy. Strike teams reporting success across all targets, Ben Tyler announced. Minimal casualties on our side. The Council's production capability is crippled. Katie nodded. Good, but we're not done. Henry, what's the next target? In Geneva, Henry Walsh pulled up star charts. The Council's supply network. They have major depots at these locations. Without supplies, their fleets can't operate. Send the coordinates to our fleet commanders, Katie ordered. We're going hunting. The Council tried to respond, but their command structure was breaking down. Half their communication systems were still compromised by Jake Peterson's virus. Orders took hours to reach fleet commanders instead of minutes. By the time they responded to one attack, 3 more had already happened. On the Zorth homeworld, Jake and his team had gone from sabotage to intelligence gathering. They moved through the underground tunnels, placing listening devices and hacking into secure networks. I'm into their central military database, Jake whispered to his team. Downloading fleet positions, supply routes, defense plans, everything. The data flowed back to Earth through hidden channels. Sophie Brooks received it on Luna and immediately distributed it to fleet commanders. Human ships knew where every Council vessel was at all times. It was like fighting with the enemy's playbook in your hands. Commander Ben Tyler led a strike force to hit a major supply depot in the Antares sector. 20 human ships jumped into the system and found 50 Council vessels guarding the depot. We're outnumbered, his tactical officer said nervously. Ben smiled. Numbers don't matter when you know exactly what they're going to do. Thanks to Sophie's intelligence, Ben knew the Council's defensive plan. He knew which ships would move first, which sectors were weakly defended, where the command ship was positioned. All ships execute attack pattern Delta, Ben ordered. The human fleet split into 3 groups. They hit the Council defense from 3 angles simultaneously, targeting the exact weak points Ben knew about. The Council ships tried to respond, but their movements were predicted and countered before they happened. In 30 minutes, the supply depot was destroyed. The Council lost 6 months' worth of supplies. Ben's force lost 2 ships. As Ben jumped back to hyperspace, he opened a channel to Katie. Another successful mission. The Council is running out of supplies fast. Keep the pressure on, Katie replied. We want them desperate. But Earth's military wasn't the only weapon. Daniel Carter was waging a different kind of war. He appeared in broadcasts across Council space, speaking directly to the people. Not to governments, not to military leaders, to ordinary beings just trying to live their lives. You didn't want this war, Daniel said gently. Your leaders did. They wanted power, control. They couldn't accept that one species wanted to be free. And now they're losing. But this doesn't have to be your fight. He showed footage of human attacks. But he was careful. Every video showed human forces avoiding civilian targets. Shipyards were destroyed. But the residential sections were untouched. Supply depots burned, but nearby cities were left alone. We're not here to conquer you, Daniel explained. We're here to free ourselves. And maybe, if you want it, to free you too. 3 Council species secretly contacted Earth. They were small species, ones that had been forced into the Council centuries ago. They wanted out. Daniel met with their ambassadors in secret. If you withdraw from the war, we'll protect you, help you establish independence. The ambassadors were nervous. The Council will punish us. Let them try, Daniel said. We'll make sure they can't. You have my word. One by one, the 3 species announced their withdrawal from the war. The Council was furious but powerless to stop them. They were too busy fighting humanity to punish deserters. Other species began to whisper. If 3 could leave, why not more? The hive mind actors made their own calculation. They processed millions of scenarios and reached one conclusion. Fighting humanity was a losing strategy. Their fleets would be destroyed. their resources depleted, their people endangered. The actors announced their withdrawal from the war. They were one of the Council's major military powers. Losing them was a disaster. The Council's leadership met in emergency session again. Mordath looked at the others with something close to fear. We're losing. Not just battles. The entire structure is collapsing. We still have the first and second fleets, the Jorth ambassador argued. 15,000 ships. We send everything. Crush Earth once and for all. Some agreed. Others weren't sure. The Vex representative spoke up. What if we lose? What if 15,000 ships aren't enough? We'll have nothing left. Then we negotiate, another ambassador suggested. Never. The Jorth ambassador roared. We don't negotiate with primitives. But the reality was they might not have a choice. The Council's first and second fleets gathered at Gateway Station, a massive space station that controlled the main trade routes. It was a strategic location and heavily defended. If humanity wanted to truly break the Council, they'd have to take Gateway.
Katie Morgan knew the battle was coming.
Intelligence showed the Council massing forces. 15,000 ships, 3 times what they had brought to Proxima. This is their last stand, Daniel said during a strategy meeting. If we break them here, the war is over. Katie studied the tactical maps. Gateway Station was tough. Heavy shields, powerful weapons, and now it was surrounded by the Council's best remaining ships. We can't just rush in like we did at Proxima, Katie said. They're ready for us now. They know our tricks. Henry Walsh had an idea. We don't need to beat all 15,000 ships. We just need to make them think they can't win. How? Katie asked. Henry smiled. With a little help from some friends. He contacted the 3 species that had withdrawn from the war. We need your help. Not to fight, just to show up. The species were confused. Show up where? At Gateway Station, Henry said. Bring your fleets. Just be visible. Let the Council see that you're on our side now. The species agreed. They showed up with their own fleets. Not huge fleets, maybe 2,000 ships total. But it was enough. Katie gathered Earth's forces. 1,200 ships. It wasn't enough to match the Council's 15,000. But with the allied species, they had 3,400 total. Still outnumbered. But it was closer. The Battle of Gateway Station began at midnight Earth time. The human fleet jumped in first. 1,200 ships against 15,000. The Council thought it would be a massacre. Then the Allied fleets jumped in. The Council's sensors lit up with new contacts. Suddenly, the odds didn't look so good. But Katie had one more surprise. The AI system called Athena. Athena was humanity's secret weapon. An artificial intelligence designed specifically for warfare. It could process millions of tactical scenarios per second, predict enemy movements, coordinate fleet actions with perfect timing. Every human ship was linked to Athena. They moved as one organism. Perfect coordination, no wasted movements, no mistakes. And then came the drones. Each human ship released 50 autonomous drones. Small, fast, AI-controlled fighters. Suddenly, 1,200 human ships became 72,000 combat units. The Council's tactical advantage evaporated. They were facing an enemy that moved with inhuman precision and outnumbered them in actual combat units. 6 months after Gateway Station, Daniel Carter stood in the same council chamber where war had been declared. But everything was different now. The council members who had voted for war were gone. Some resigned. Others were arrested by their own governments. A few had fled to distant systems. The chamber was filled with new faces, representatives from species that wanted change, ambassadors from worlds tired of council tyranny, and for the first time real allies of humanity. Daniel wore the same simple black suit he had worn that first day. But he didn't stand alone anymore. Katie Morgan stood beside him in her dress uniform. Henry Walsh was there too, representing Earth's government. Jake Peterson had come out of the shadows, finally acknowledged as the hero he was. Mordath was gone. The floating brain in a mechanical shell had been overthrown by his own people. In his place sat a Jorth female named Kira. She looked at Daniel with respect, not contempt. Ambassador Carter, Kira said formally, the Provisional Council recognizes Earth and humanity. We apologize for the war. We accept responsibility for our actions. Daniel nodded. Apology accepted. But apologies aren't enough. We need to make sure this never happens again. Agreed, said the Vex representative, a being made of living crystal. We propose dissolving the Galactic Council entirely, creating something new. Daniel had spent 6 months preparing for this moment. Earth has a proposal. A galactic commonwealth. Not a council that rules. A commonwealth where all species are equal partners. He projected a document into the center of the chamber. It was a constitution. Written by humans but designed for everyone. Every species controls their own home system. No exceptions, Daniel explained. No species can claim authority over another. Trade is free. Travel is open. But sovereignty is absolute. The chamber was silent as they read. It was revolutionary. The old council had controlled everything. This new system gave power back to individual species. What about disputes? Asked a small amphibious being from the Vryn. Who mediates conflicts? A council of mediators, Daniel said. But they don't have power to enforce. They can only suggest solutions. If species can't agree, they handle it themselves. That could lead to war, someone objected. Yes, Daniel agreed. But so can having one central power that everyone hates. At least this way, wars will be small, local, not galactic. Henry Walsh stepped forward. We're also proposing mutual defense treaties. If someone attacks a Commonwealth member, all members can choose to respond. Not must, can, it's voluntary. Katie added her part. And we're proposing a technology sharing program. Earth has advanced military technology. We'll share it, but gradually, with safeguards, so no one species can dominate. The species in the chamber looked at each other. Humans were offering to share the weapons that had defeated the council. That was power, real power. Why? Kira asked. Why share your advantages? Daniel smiled. Because we learned something about the council. They kept species weak to stay strong. That created resentment, rebellion. We don't want to rule. We want partners. Strong partners who can defend themselves. Debate went on for hours. Some species were suspicious. Others were excited. A few worried that humanity had secret motives. Finally, they voted. Not all at once like before. Species took time to discuss internally, make real decisions. It took 3 days. When the votes came in, it was unanimous. The Galactic Council was dissolved. The Galactic Commonwealth was born. Daniel became the first Secretary General. Not because he wanted the job, because everyone else wanted him to have it. They trusted him. Katie retired from military service. She had fought her war, won her battles. Now she wanted peace. She took a position teaching at the new Interspecies Military Academy, teaching young officers from 100 species how to fight, more importantly teaching them why to fight, and when not to. Jake Peterson disappeared back into the shadows. His team had done their job. The war was over, but someone still needed to watch for threats. Keep Earth safe. He was good at that. Henry Walsh stayed in Geneva, helping new species upgrade their technology, teaching them what Earth had learned, making sure the galaxy advanced together. Lisa Grant commanded the first joint exploration fleet, human ships alongside Jorth vessels, Vex scouts working with Vryn merchants. They headed toward unknown space, looking for new worlds. New friends, maybe new threats. But the work wasn't easy. 10,000 years of council rule had created deep problems. 3 months after the Commonwealth was founded, a crisis emerged. The Jorth discovered that a mining company was exploiting workers from a smaller species. Basically slavery with extra steps. The small species appealed to the Commonwealth. Help us. Protect us. But the Constitution said species controlled their own systems. The Commonwealth couldn't interfere, unless the Jorth invited them to. Kira faced a choice. Ask for help and admit her people had problems, or handle it alone and maybe fail. She called Daniel. We need help. Not military help. Advisor help. Can you send someone? Daniel sent a team of human labor rights experts. They didn't have power to enforce anything. They just advised, suggested solutions. The Jorth government made the final decisions. It worked. The mining company was shut down. The workers were freed and compensated. Justice was served. Not by force, by cooperation. Similar crises happened across Commonwealth space. Economic disputes, border conflicts, cultural misunderstandings. Each time the Commonwealth mediated, suggested, never forced. It wasn't perfect. Some conflicts couldn't be solved peacefully. 2 small species went to war over a resource-rich asteroid belt. The Commonwealth tried to mediate but failed. Daniel watched with frustration as the war started. We should stop them. We can't, Katie reminded him. That's not what the Commonwealth does. We gave them freedom. Freedom means they can make mistakes. The war lasted 3 months. Both species bloodied each other. Finally, exhausted and broke, they agreed to arbitration. They split the asteroid belt 50-50. They had to learn the hard way, Henry observed. Just like humanity did. Sometimes you need to fail before you succeed. But the Commonwealth proved its worth in other ways. A year after its founding, long-range sensors detected something. A fleet of ships approaching from deep space. Unknown design. Unknown species. And they weren't responding to communications. The warning went out across Commonwealth space. Unknown, potentially hostile contact. Species that had been enemies a year ago now coordinated their defense. Sea Yorth fleets moved to intercept. Human ships joined them. Vex scouts gathered intelligence. The Vrin used their trading networks to spread information fast. When the unknown fleet arrived, they found a united galaxy ready to defend itself. The newcomers were called the Dry. They had been expanding through dark space, conquering isolated systems. They expected to find another weak, divided region. Instead, they found the Commonwealth. The Dry attacked a border system. They outnumbered the Defenders 3-1. But the Defenders called for help. Within hours, Commonwealth fleets were jumping to assist. Human ships with quantum disruptors. Jorth battleships with improved shields. Vex vessels with new sensor systems. All working together. The Dry were tough. Their weapons were powerful. Their ships were advanced. But they weren't prepared for coordinated resistance. Katie came out of retirement to advise the defense. They're used to fighting divided enemies. Show them unity. The Commonwealth fleet fought with the same coordination Earth had used against the Council. Athena AI coordinated movements, shared targeting data, predicted enemy tactics. The battle was hard, many died. But the Commonwealth won. The Dry commander requested negotiations. He was shocked. You species were at war a year ago. How do you fight together now? Daniel met with him personally. We learned that working together is better than fighting alone. You can learn that too. Join the Commonwealth or go home. Your choice. The Dry chose to go home. But they took information about the Commonwealth with them. Maybe in time they would return as friends. 5 years after the war ended, Daniel stood in the same spot where he had first smiled and said, "Finally." The chamber was full. More species than ever. The Commonwealth had grown. An ambassador from a distant system stood to speak. "Ambassador Carter, our people have been watching the Commonwealth. We want to join, but we're worried. Can so many different species really work together?" Daniel thought about the question. 5 years ago, he would have been uncertain, but now he knew the answer. Can we work together? Not always perfectly. We argue, we disagree. Sometimes we fail. But yes, we can work together. Because we choose to. Every day we choose cooperation over conflict. Unity over division. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Katie watched from the observation gallery. She was 70 now, gray-haired and tired. But she smiled. They had done it. Fought a war, won, and built something better. Henry sat beside her. We could have conquered them. Become an empire. But we didn't, Katie said. That's what makes us human. We have the power to dominate. We choose not to. Jake Peterson appeared beside them. He was older too, but still moved like a ghost. New intel suggests another threat might be forming in the Andromeda sector. Katie sighed. There's always another threat. Yeah, Jake agreed. But now we're not alone. We've got friends. Down in the chamber, Daniel finished his speech. The Commonwealth isn't perfect. It's messy, complicated, sometimes frustrating.